much for joining us. I'm Sam and I moderate these presentations. In just a second, we'll be joined by one of our senior financial advisors. His name is Tyson Mayvar, and he is going to be speaking to ConocoPhillips employees about whether it would be the right choice for you to take the lump sum or the annuity option when you decided to leave ConocoPhillips. Before he comes on, just a couple of housekeeping items from me. As we wait for a couple other people to trickle in, I'd like to quickly remind you that we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by ConocoPhillips. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors here, so please keep that in mind as you're listening along today. Second, while Tyson is speaking, you will see me entering some links. They're going to pop up right above our heads here. They'll guide you to various resources we have available, one of which will be a link to book an appointment on Tyson's calendar or one of his colleagues' calendars if you wish to do so. You can also follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We post tons of ConocoPhillips related retirement focused content weekly, and we really think you get some value out of it if you considered giving us a follow. And lastly, I apologize in advance. Tyson will not have time today to answer any questions live while he is presenting, but I encourage you to still ask away. I will be fielding those questions to another one of our ConocoPhillips focused financial advisors, and they will reach out to you after this presentation has ended, either through phone or email, to answer those questions and concerns with you. And with all of that out of the way now, we're going to jump into it with Tyson Mayvar.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for attending our webinar series today. My name is Tyson Mayvar. I'm one of the ConocoPhillips focused retirement advisors here at the Retirement Group. And on today's webinar series, we're going to be talking about the ConocoPhillips pension plan specifically. We've had many of our clients and people that we've been talking to offered packages to leave the company this year. This is typically when we're pretty busy doing retirement planning for a lot of the folks who we specialize in working with through this transition. Today, we're going to talk about some of the issues with the different pension plans, the lump sum interest rates, and some of the different decisions you'll have specific to your pension plan when you leave ConocoPhillips. So first, some questions that we ask when we begin this retirement planning journey, especially when somebody is faced with an offer to leave a company or just looking at their retirement plans in general. Am I ready to retire? We're talking about psychologically ready to retire. Have you really put together the plan of things that you're going to be doing after you leave ConocoPhillips? Maybe that does entail some part-time or full-time work. Maybe you're entering into full retirement. But what does that new schedule look like? Hopefully a better schedule. We just want to start to envision what that next chapter looks like and who we plan on spending it with so that we're not caught off guard entering into retirement and end up wasting a lot of our time on activities that don't provide us a lot of fulfillment after we leave that rather cumbersome schedule in many cases from ConocoPhillips. Can I retire? Can I financially afford to retire and have a sustainable retirement plan where my money is outlasting me and not the other way around? We want to make sure that with very conservative assumptions on a retirement cash flow analysis, that we have a high degree of confidence that no matter what happens with the economy, with inflation, with interest rates, with tax rates and the geopolitical environment, that you have a very high degree of certainty of success in your retirement plan. And we have a cash flow analysis that we offer to do complimentary for everybody at ConocoPhillips to help to answer that question positively, hopefully. How does the COP pension and other benefits come into play? So your 401k plan, maybe you have a key employee supplemental retirement plan, executive compensation plans, IRAs, Roth IRAs, non-qualified accounts, trust accounts. And we want to put all those together so that we understand how to tax efficiently convert those buckets of assets into a sustainable income stream that we can minimize and mitigate our taxes long-term and ultimately have that money lasting as long as possible. Health insurance is a big concern for a lot of people that we work with. Whether you're covered or not by ConocoPhillips is going to be pretty important. If you're not covered, we want to look at alternatives to minimize the total lifetime expenses associated with health insurance and optimize the tax code as well. Things like HSAs, FSAs, the ways that you're contributing to health insurance and those different types of accounts now can help to mitigate the costs later, as well as mitigate the taxes if we use those accounts and benefits efficiently. And then also looking at Medicare and the options that you have once you turn 65 and have to go on to Medicare. is a pretty important part of the retirement planning process as well. And then what is your plan? Do you even have a plan in place? This goes back to that cash flow analysis of what are we going to do with our pension plan? Should we take the lump sum versus one of the various annuity options? We'll talk about some of those today. What to do with your ConocoPhillips and Phillips 66 stock that you may have in your 401k plan, when to start doing Roth conversions, if ever. Should you consider the net unrealized appreciation strategy on your company stock? When should you do your rollover? You don't have to do that right away. Some people never do it. We want to start talking about those things ahead of time so that you don't end up making some of these really big decisions under duress and unfortunately having regrets with some of the decisions that you made. And many of these decisions are irrevocable, so we want to start thinking about them and talking about them, hopefully with somebody that has experience working with somebody in the same situation as yourself in the past, which we would believe that we've done a great job helping people in a similar situation, leaving ConocoPhillips. Now, depending on when you started with the company, you may be on one of these 8 different titles, as they call the pension plans. And the 2 most common, we're going to talk about issues with the interest rates as well as the age penalties, the Phillips Retirement Income Plan and the ConocoPhillips or the retirement plan of Conoco. Those are the key primary defined benefit plans that we work with most of our clients coming from ConocoPhillips. The cash balance plan, I would say, is the 3rd most common. And that's what anybody who was retired after the big merger with Conoco and Phillips over 20 years ago now will be on the cash balance plan. But if you've worked at the company for over 20 years, it's possible you have one of these defined benefit plans, which have very lucrative payouts, both on the lump sum and the annuity, but also a lot of special rules that apply to how the lump sum is calculated. We want to talk about that and spend a lot of time ahead of time before your retirement date discussing some of the issues with your decisions when you leave the company, regardless of which one of these titles you're on. Now, the retirement plan of Conoco, I'll go ahead and zoom in the age penalties in a moment, but you are eligible for this once you reach 50 years of age and 10 years of service. Now, the normal retirement age is age 65. However, what you'll see on this age penalty schedule is that you will qualify for 100% benefits at age 60. Even if you don't work until age 60, which is an important distinction to be made, although you would have to have been hired prior to 2003 as a Conoco employee to qualify for this plan. So let's zoom in here. You could see if you retire at age 50, assuming you had 10 years of service, and you take your plan immediately, whether it's a lump sum or one of the annuities, you're only going to walk away with 53% of your pension. However, you can defer the commencement of this plan, and you can see your pension is going to grow at a pretty substantial rate from 53 to 58% by deferring it just 1 year from age 50 to 51. That looks like a 5% increase, although the way the math works out, it's close to a 9% increase when you go from 53% to 58%. Effectively guaranteed growth on your pension based on the full faith and credit of ConocoPhillips, of course. Better than any growth rate, at least on a guaranteed basis, that you can get outside of the plan. So this is a pretty good argument to be made for the deferral of the election of your pension for somebody who's only 50 years old when they leave. Now, that, of course, assumes that you have other sources of capital. Could be your 401k. We might be able to help you get some penalty-free income out of that. If you're only 50 years old, you may want to consider working. Most people have to continue working and can't retire fully, at least at the early age of 50. But we would run your cash flow analysis to start to determine when's the optimal time to commence the benefit. And you also have to be aware that interest rates still affect your lump sum after you leave the company. So if you do decide to defer the election of your pension, the lump sum will be fluctuating on a quarterly basis depending on the direction of interest rates. Lump sum will go down if interest rates are rising, and the lump sum will go up if interest rates are falling. So potentially another argument to be made for deferring the election of your pension, even if you don't have age penalties. If you're 60 or older and you leave the company, you might want to wait to take your pension to optimize the interest rate environment to maximize what you pull out on the lump sum side, at least. On the Phillips plan, similar, but a little bit different. You cannot commence your pension prior to age 55. And if you leave the company prior to age 55, you could see the age penalties are even more severe. For example, if you left when you were 50 years old, waited 5 years to take your pension, you'd only be walking away with 40% of your pension. You could still gain 100% of your pension by waiting as late as age 65 versus somebody who left the company at age 55 and took their pension immediately. The age penalty is only 25%. You get 75% of your pension. And you also are able to maximize your pension at age 60 if you wait till age 55 to leave the company. Compared to somebody who left prior to 55, you don't max out your pension until age 65. So certainly considerations for taking an offer, the growth rate of your pension, maybe some arguments to be made for waiting to take your lump sum, especially if interest rates are falling, and maybe some arguments to be made for waiting until age 55 to leave the company so your age penalties aren't as severe and you can walk away with more of your pension at an earlier age. Now, of course, the lump sum is not the only way to go. There's a variety of annuity options. We have many clients who have taken the annuity because it just made more sense for their circumstances. So let's talk about the different payment methods. So single life annuity, also known as the straight life annuity. This is the largest of the annuity payout options because it is good for only one life. You, the employee or retiree, as long as you're alive, that same amount of money will be coming in. It's a fixed annuity. There's no cost of living increases associated with this. And once you pass away, the benefits stop. There's no death benefit payable as a lump sum or an annuity on this straight life annuity payout. The joint survivor annuity, on the other hand, is good for 2 lifetimes. Typically for a spouse, but doesn't have to be a spousal joint annuitant. And you get to select how good the death benefit's going to be for your spouse or for your joint annuitant. However, the more income you give to your spouse or your joint annuitant after your lifetime, the less money you are going to receive during your lifetime. And the options with this, the company allows you to pick which joint annuity you're going to go with. If you take the 100% joint annuity, you're going to have a pretty big discount during your lifetime, but your spouse or joint annuitant will have zero change in the income to the household past your lifetime, assuming they outlive you. So it's a better death benefit, but it costs you on the front end in the early years of retirement. You can go as low as a 10% joint survivor, where you would not be giving up as much during your lifetime, but your joint annuitant would receive a 90% discount. They would only be gaining 10% of your pension once you pass away. And many different options in between. The company allows you to take anything in increments of 10%, 25, or 33% in between 10 to 100% joint and survivor payout. So very flexible, especially if you have a spouse. Maybe your spouse doesn't have his or her own pension. Maybe they have a pension, but it's not quite as good as yours coming from ConocoPhillips. Maybe he or she has a big age discrepancy, or they plan on continuing to work beyond your lifetime. Maybe you even decide to add a child, especially in the case of a special needs child, onto this pension plan. There's a lot of different variability in circumstances that might warrant one pension option versus another, but we spend a lot of time in this when we go through this cash flow analysis exercise, and I would love to talk with you on a one-on-one basis about it. Of course, the lump sum's always been popular, even as interest rates have gone up and lump sum payouts have gone down. The lump sum, I would say, at least in my experience, is still the most popular option among retirees from ConocoPhillips. And the reasons that when I ask somebody, why are you leaning that way? I want to get an idea of how well thought out this plan to take the lump sum is, because whatever option you take, it's irrevocable and it's worth some discussion. The reasons I hear from people why they want to take the lump sum, big one is the death benefit flexibility. To have multiple beneficiaries on there, whether it's wife, husband, kids, a cause that's important to them. There's a lot of flexibility with the lump sum. A lot of people say that they believe they can invest that wisely and produce a better income stream over their lifetime. A big one recently that I've been hearing is the risk of inflation eroding the purchasing power of their annuity. Whereas with the lump sum, at least you can hedge against inflation by investing that, maybe not all of it, but at least a portion of it in high quality stocks that are growing as prices grow throughout our retirement, and more control could be to increase or decrease the income stream or the cash flow from the portfolio. It might be to be more tax efficient. For example, if somebody leaves ConocoPhillips, goes back to work somewhere else, they don't need the income right away. So they might take the lump sum to invest that money, but continue deferring taxes versus taking the annuity and having forced taxable income when you don't even necessarily need that income. That's an example where flexibility can pay off in the long run to control your tax record a little bit better. So a lot of reasons people consider the lump sum, but many cases we have actually recommended one of the annuity options to folks, typically because they expect a long life. They are very conservative on how they invest their money. Oftentimes people that didn't pay a lot of attention to their 401k or maybe never contributed to the 401k aren't comfortable as much with the investments. And, oftentimes that's why they'll hire a financial advisor, but also just having the certainty of that lifetime income, even if it is eroded by inflation over time, and even if there's not a very flexible death benefit. Some people don't care as much about those two things and may find some benefit in one of these annuity options. And just know that you don't have to make that decision right when you retire. So a lot of people will defer the decision just to figure out exactly what they want to do. The one thing to note on that is if you are over age 65 when you leave the company, you will have to make a decision on how to take your pension pretty quickly after you retire. If you retire prior to 65, you'll have a little more flexibility on exactly when you commence both the lump sum and annuity options on your pension. And we hear a lot of questions. Why, when interest rates go up, does my lump sum on my Heritage ConocoPhillips pension plan go down? And it's similar to a mortgage calculation. It has to do with the present value of money. If you have a fixed budget, similar to how you have a fixed single life annuity on your pension, when you're going to purchase a mortgage and interest rates go up, the amount of house you can afford to now buy goes down. If nothing's changed, the amount of money you can afford in your monthly budget toward a house. That also has to do with how when interest rates go up and you take a lump sum of money, you can now invest that in bonds that are paying more interest. So to keep you indifferent between taking the lump sum and the annuity, assuming a fixed life expectancy, the company doesn't have to give you as much money in your lump sum when interest rates go up in order to create the same cash flow that you could otherwise create from the annuity. So they do change this on a quarterly basis, and it can create some opportunities to get more money out of the lump sum if you happen to be able to retire in a low interest rate environment. However, what's happened recently, we'll zoom into the segment rates as well as the 30-year treasury rates here. Interest rates have gone up quite a bit, going from quarter one to quarter two, 2025. The company is going to look at the fourth month prior to the quarter in which you are retiring and take interest rate data. Now, for most people, they're going to be using corporate bond interest rates, the first, second, and third segment rates. This is for service after 2008 for most employees. Service prior to 2008, for at least the Heritage Phillips and the Heritage Conoco plan, they use lower interest rates, the 30-year treasury rate, which produces higher lump sums. And in fact, for Heritage Conoco employees, they also use a rate called the PBGC rate, which is even lower, which is why, all things held equal, Conoco folks will have higher lump sums than our Heritage Phillips folks. So we focus on these rates because they change quarterly and are going to guide you in which direction to not only take your pension, but the timing of commencing your pension and maybe even the timing of your retirement. If we see interest rates fall, it's going to create some good opportunities for folks to retire and walk away with a much higher lump sum. However, recently the interest rates have come up about 0.5%. And a good rule of thumb to remember, every 1% increase to these rates is roughly a 10% drop on your lump sum. And vice versa. When interest rates drop 1%, you'll probably make close to 10% on your lump sum, just depending on which plan you fall under, how long you've been with the company. Your age plays a role in this as well. The younger you are, the bigger an impact interest rate changes have on your lump sum. And just remember that you don't have to take your pension right away. There could be some arguments to wait to take your lump sum and even to take the annuity, especially if you have age penalties still. But certainly if we're in a falling interest rate environment, you may want to wait maybe even several quarters, maybe several years to take your pension, depending on all of the circumstances that we want to line out in your cash flow analysis. Unfortunately, what we found statistically is that 74% of Americans over the age of 50 don't even have a written plan for their retirement. And in my opinion, this is just not acceptable, folks. It's too important to avoid spending time on what we find statistically is a stressful event in almost all of our lives. The idea of retirement, the changes that go with retirement, figuring out the next chapter, and becoming financially independent. Most of us are dependent on the income of a company most of our lives. And for a lot of us, retirement is that shift into financial independence, which is very stressful for a lot of people. But it's a lot more stressful to run out of money in retirement. And the odds of that happening go down substantially if some pre-planning is done. So please spend some time with us or with some group that has a track record of working with people in a similar situation as yourself, somebody who's worked at ConocoPhillips and understands the benefits plans and some of the decisions that you'll have to make. This is all on a complimentary basis. We hope that you consider becoming a client of ours, advisory client, as we manage assets for ConocoPhillips employees and retirees and many other Fortune 100 companies. But there's no obligation to work with us if we run your cash flow analysis, if we do an NUA analysis for you, a Social Security analysis, an asset allocation analysis on your 401k. All of these are complimentary services. All we ask is that if you go through these exercises with us and you found value in the time that you invested with us, please just refer some of your coworkers to us so that we continue to grow our business and improve our reputation within the ConocoPhillips community. How to get a hold of us, you can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. You can call us at 800-900-5867 if you just have some specific questions or would like to talk to one of our ConocoPhillips focused advisors. You can also take a picture of this QR code on the left to get onto mine or one of my colleagues' schedules who understands the ConocoPhillips plans. And I encourage everybody to follow our LinkedIn page, as that's where we upload a lot of the content that we produce, some of it specific to the ConocoPhillips retirement strategies, and some of it just generic retirement planning, estate planning, investment planning strategies that we found to be helpful to people that are approaching their final retirement from ConocoPhillips. With that, we're going to wrap it up today. Thanks so much, everybody, for spending a few minutes with us. Everybody have a good, safe rest of your week, and we hope to talk to you very soon.